Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well, and welcome to another episode of the Known Legacy Podcast. I'm Bill, and want to let you know about a couple things. We have some, if you want to watch us live, you can go to Facebook and go to Known Legacy Ministries.
Most of the time, we have a great piece of equipment that we absolutely love. It's a product called Switcher, and it does a lot of good things for us. But for some reason, it seems like Apple updated a bunch of things today, and Switcher decided to. So not everything's working the way it's supposed to. So unfortunately, we were a little delayed. We apologize, and we promise you we'll keep doing better. Right?
You know what? We'll try to do better. I think that's the deal. I don't know though, but yeah. So hey, wanna guys, we're just a bunch of hot messes in Jesus' name. But big thanks to our producer Kyle, who is on today.
Yes,
we love Kyle.
We would have him on video, but we can't do it today because of the glitches. So, anyways, Kyle's
I don't know how that works. I don't know what to do with my hands.
I'll fall on the sword today, guys.
Fall on the sword.
It's not you, Kyle. Thank you very much for everything you do. And we have a special guest. So, Bill, take us over to the special guest.
We are so glad to have this guy here. First thing, Travis, thank you for being our cohort. What is a cohort?
I don't know, but I feel like I could do better.
We probably could. So our guest today is a guy who makes beef jerky look like a pink cupcake.
I don't know how to take that. Is that a good thing?
It's a good thing.
Okay.
This is like a man's man.
All right, I like it.
I mean, if there was someone who could chew leather, this would be the guy. Give it up for the man, the myth, the legend, Jay Mayo. Jay, so glad to have you on today.
All right, yay.
Hey, guys. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can hear you.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good.
Good. We're so glad to have you.
Man, you couldn't have a more technologically incompetent guest, because right in the middle of that, my earphones just jumped on my iPhone, and I freaked out and thought I messed the whole thing up here. So
you're great. I love it. Look at behind this man. He has a deer head,
which is fantastic.
It makes me so happy.
There's a duck and see that pheasant? Let's see if I can see that pheasant.
Yeah, see if we can turn the camera to show the pheasant.
Yeah, it's over there somewhere. Anyway,
That's awesome. It looks beautiful.
I just set up this way only because the window's the other direction, and it shows my bald spot, so I didn't want it glaring off.
There's nothing wrong with a bald spot. So there. Oh, wow. Yes. Very nice. Well, dude, we are so glad to have you on today. Jay, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, your story? Just take a couple minutes so that Travis can get to know you. I already know this guy. I'm kind of a fangirl.
I can tell.
Just kind of a fangirl of this.
I can tell.
But no, share a little bit about your story and who you are and all that kind of stuff for our listeners and our viewers.
Yeah, I live in Midland, Texas. Spent for the most part, 25 years here. We moved away for a few years, but I was in church ministry, vocational ministry for like 36 years. And so, in different capacities over the years, student ministry, missions ministry, associate pastor, ended up the last, I think, 8 or 10 years doing counseling, leading a counseling department and teaching, being on a teaching team. And so we moved away for a few years from Midland, thinking we'd move down to the North Austin area and kind of transition with my folks. And just through a bunch of health events, we ended up moving back. My folks were not in good health, and they eventually passed away a year and a half ago.
Sorry about that.
And so when I came back, though, I transitioned into a role in the business world. And the best way to describe it is, like they may use this term, I'm kind of like over operations, but I'm like this CRO. If you had like this chief relational officer at the company I'm at, and I really kind of operate in the COO capacity, but I'm just make sure relationally our team works as a team, kind of responsible for building culture, and also trying to make sure, if this makes sense, that our organization shifts and changes to maximize the potential of the person. So I kind of have my eyes on an organizational structure to make sure, man, are we structured in a way that this guy can be free to fully do what he's gifted to do, which makes our company better. So I'm also kind of keep an eye on the organizational structure and always trying to say, hey, we're limiting this guy or this group. And so it's a real unique role, and I'm kind of a shepherd and a pastor to our team. So this company took a risk to let me just be me and then kind of find a hole for me to fit into. And I just call it CRO, I'm Chief Relational Officer.
I love it, dude.
I wouldn't say a risk. That's like saying, hey, I'm going to buy Apple stock. You know what I'm saying? Like it really isn't a risk. I mean, this guy, man, he has a heart for men and a heart for seeing men come alive. In fact, Jay, you have a nonprofit too. What's that nonprofit called?
The nonprofit, there's actually two different things that I'm working on. One is called Epikos, Epikos Group, which is kind of a not leadership consulting like you think it is, but building leaders, and a counseling / company that I'm working on. And the other is a pretty cool nonprofit that's totally something I haven't kind of officially gone public, called Epic Warrior Foundation. And it really is focusing on the everyday warrior, like first responders, law enforcement. And who fights for the warrior, and trying to help keep those warriors in the fight. And so it's providing spiritual, emotional, psychological support and making sure that happens in every department across the state of Texas. And
so cool.
And then secondly, and honestly, in a more, I'm going to use the term tactical sense, is if there needs to be funding for the best possible defensive training for a department and equipment, if they could say, man, if we could just do this, it would really help us protect and serve. And so it's trying to focus on that. That's what this organization ultimately will be, Epic Warrior Foundation.
That's awesome.
And so you kind of seen me float that logo around.
Yeah,
Facebook.
I love it. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
So even as we're, as I'm thinking about it, what made you create it, or where did the desire come from to want to start an organization like that?
The Epic Warrior Foundation?
Yeah, the Epic Warrior.
Or both of those?
Yeah, both
really, I sat down about 8 or 10 months ago, and I just, it's one of those reviews we all do as guys, like, what are the things I can't get off my heart?
Yeah.
And what would I do with those? I was actually reading, kind of a plug, I was rereading a book by Erwin McManus called The Last Arrow, and he's just talking about dying with no arrow left unflung in your life, So I was like, what are the arrows that just are on my heart that I just need to draw back and fling before I die? And the three things I identified was, I always want, you know me, Bill, I always want to help people live in light of the bigger story. Like, you were made to live in the bigger story that God is writing. You have a role to play. And so that's where epikos is really the Greek word for story. And so that kind of desire to continue to do that on a more formal basis with Epikos. But the Epic Warrior, I've always had a burden for military law enforcement, in the sense that they're warriors that put their lives on the line for the sake of other people, but they often are, no one walks with them after the battle. So there's a lot of organizations that do that, like Wounded Warriors and things that happen after the fact. But my burden was, how do you keep these guys in the battle? Because I spend a lot of time doing ride-alongs with law enforcement locally, and what I know is that, man, they go through daily trauma and daily struggle just protecting and serving. So it was kind of like, how do you keep them in the battle? So that's the tagline, like, helping warriors stay in the fight, like, because you don't want to wait till they're completely knocked out of the battle to then kind of tend to the warrior. I'm talking, like, what can we do in the meantime to help them process what it takes to be a warrior in everyday life? And I mean that even in first responders. So it's not going to include just law enforcement, but like the first responder, fire department, healthcare workers, those people who are putting their lives on the line for the sake of other people. They are epic warriors in the sense that they're fighting for a bigger story. Yeah. That's kind of the whole point of that. So, yeah.
And I'd wager to bet that the last year has been exceptionally hard for first responders, just
imagine.
because of a lot of the political issues that have risen up. And I remember being told a long time ago by one of my pastor friends that if you ever have a chance to get one of those guys and they actually start talking about the battle, if they ever start talking about some of the stuff that they've seen that no one will ever understand, your job is to just sit there and listen, because them being comfortable enough to share it with someone that's not in the trenches with them is an honor in some ways and very therapeutic for them. And I have my wife's cousin married a Houston firefighter, and I always loved my times with him around the campfire because, unfortunately, it was about halfway through the bottle of bourbon that he'd start talking about like rolling up on a scene as a first responder, and there's 3 kids in the car, and having to process that and come home. And I'm even tearing up thinking about it because there's no way I can't imagine processing through that.
Yeah, I don't even know.
And it not happening just once in a life. It's happening on every shift kind of moment, and so, man, I thank you so much for doing that. If you let's say there's some guys that are listening in that have some buddies that are first responders, what advice would you give to them or the first responders as they're kind of processing through the challenges that they have on a regular basis?
I think you're 100% right about their hesitancy to talk about it. And I think more than anything, they're right back. They don't leave the battle. I mean, the difference in the law enforcement, their daily deployment, right? So I think in their mind, I've got to put that emotion aside. I've got to put that trauma aside because I got to be back on for the next shift. And
I think part of it is, again, their ethos is to protect. And they think that if I share this, I'm burdening someone else with something that I can barely carry myself. And so I don't want to do that. I want to protect them. And so that's why they don't talk to their wives and their spouses about some of the hardest things that they deal with, because they don't want to burden them. They don't want to
guard their hearts too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Constantly guarding hearts.
It's really a no-win situation. And so the fact that you're willing to step into that gap and make a difference there is absolutely huge. And I pray that other men of God are being stirred by that and are figuring out how to do that with their local fire departments or their local police departments, and genuinely care for the men and women that are on the front lines in our local communities.
And again, I'd say if you're out there listening and you want to be a part of what Jay's doing, please info@knownlegacy. Send us an email, and we will info@knownlegacy.org, and we will shoot that over to Jay and connect you guys. And it's funny because this isn't even why we even asked you to be on today. This is already incredible. But it makes me jump into, you're right, there's guys who have felt the calling of what God has called them to do, whether they acknowledge that God called them to it, but they're doing what they are designed to do. But I think as we were talking, Jay, beforehand, there was this question of, the biggest mistake that men make. Like, what do you think, as we were talking, like, what is the biggest mistake that you see that men make? Because here, I'll give you a little bit of caveat. As I've talked to Jay and hear his heart, he didn't mention this, but the writer of The Last Arrow, you did ministry with him. You did hands-on ministry with him as well, correct?
Yeah,
with Erwin.
Some years serving with Erwin. Yeah, in the inner city in Dallas. Yeah,
and so that heart from Erwin is this. I can see that same heart in Jay, and that's why the question I ask about Jay helps men come alive. And so, Jay, as you're helping these men come alive, what is the biggest mistake you see men make in their lives?
That's a good question. I laughed when you initially just told me, hey, that's potentially a topic, because I was like, why are you asking me? Do you think I'm the best guy to talk about mistakes men make? That's what I was laughing. Like, I'm the biggest mistake maker, because I am.
Welcome to the club.
Right.
Welcome to the
That's
club.
right. That's exactly right. I laughed. My first initial smart butt response was, what's the biggest mistake men make? How do you narrow that down? It's the mistake they're making currently, right? That's the biggest mistake they're making. But I think one of the biggest mistakes, and so let's just cut through all the BS and I'll take it personal, I make, because I can't, I figure most guys, we all struggle with the same things. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes I have made and continue to make in my life is trying to find my value and my identity in what I do rather than who I am.
Yeah.
And that takes us back to the garden.
Yeah.
And God and the result of sin from that first disobedience. So you're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah. I think it's just a huge struggle with us as guys to center our lives around what we accomplish and achieve and do,
Yeah.
and either interconnect it. And I think by interconnecting it to who we are, we ignore the fact that I don't I don't focus on who am I becoming.
Right.
The most
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
thing that I can offer as a man is who I am, not just to the world, but to my family. And so I think that's a huge mistake. So you find guys, and like we've all been there, and we're all continuing to struggle with the center in their life about what thing they can achieve or accomplish in their life, and being driven by that, and then just having internally a complete collapse of who they are as a man, with all kind of failures in relationships and family, and I think that in leadership too. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest reasons leaders fall is what they do and achieve becomes the most important thing about their life, rather than who they are, who they're becoming, and character gets, kind of sacrificed on the altar of achievement.
So let me ask you a question. So you have a chance to gather together with CEOs and workers within companies as well as first responders. What's the process that you go through with a guy who, let's say this is hitting home for a guy, and the guy's like, I have no clue where to even start, and I don't have a chance to sit down with you. So what's your process when you have a chance to meet with a guy? What are some of the big questions you ask them to start to wrestle with, to start to peel back some of the armor, I'll put, that we use to protect ourselves, but are nothing more than just it's an easy bake oven that's baking us from the inside out, right?
Yeah.
So what's your process with them to kind of get them to experience this, and then to rediscover who God created them to be, rather than their vocation creating them into something they may not want?
Man, it's a tough reality, because as guys, we're so guarded with that. I mean, so it takes a while to build rapport with a leader in business, and to get beyond talking about how do you lead better in your company, what structures, because that's what everyone wants to talk about. How do you create a culture? And if I'm pushing in to say, no, I just want to talk about you as a person. How are you doing as a person? I think I start there to just begin to say, how are you doing as a person? Not as a leader in this company. How are you doing as a person? What are the things that you just personally struggle with in your relationships? I'm trying to just push into, how are you doing? And again, it goes back to that reality. I don't care what you can do and what you can accomplish. Who are you becoming? Who you want to be? Are you the person you want to be in your life? And really, if I can push into saying, I was thinking about this maybe being, we can jump to this, a question to how do you avoid this? And so if I went there to say, I might walk with a leader and say, you guys may remember, I can't even remember what leadership book a long time ago I read that had this exercise, and then it was popular in church life sometimes. But remember that it was a leadership book that said, envision yourself at your own funeral, and you walk in, you're sitting at the back row. Somehow, throw away the weirdness of how am I?
Yeah, exactly.
You're, right. But you're able to sit on the back row. No one knows you're there, but you're observing. And one by one, people get up and talk about you, and what they remember about you. And it starts with acquaintances, and then friends, and then it goes to family, and it goes to your kids, and it goes to your wife. And so the exercise was, what do you want them to say about you?
Yeah.
And then, in essence, you want to say, is my life aligned? Am I moving toward who I want to be remembered as?
Yeah.
So that's what I try to push in with. I mean, personally as a leader, and I think this is a like axiom of leadership. Unfortunately, the more you ascend into leadership, the lonelier you get. The few people hold you accountable, the few people you let in your life. And so leadership can be the most lonely place, no matter if this is church leadership or business leadership. And it can be the most vulnerable place. And so that's really my focus with Epikos Consulting, is to look at, I want to be a support to leaders who find themselves personally falling apart in the middle of leading, a company. And again, that's a lot of rapport I have to build with someone to go, I don't care about necessarily your leadership style. I want to know, are you becoming the person you want to be? Because if you can just begin to get aligned with that, you're going to build a great culture around here. And probably the opposite of that is true. If that's not aligned, you're going to create a toxic culture. So, I mean, that's a lot of just. Well, it's not an easy answer to that question because
well, and it shouldn't be an easy answer because it's a complicated thing that we have gotten wrong since the beginning of time.
Yeah, layers of problems.
And I love your approach of saying, if you get the core or the foundation right, everything else will start to fall into place for the most part. But we often will focus on the exterior, the leadership style, and forget that the leadership style is only a reflection of the heart of the leader. If the heart of the leader is not in the right place, it doesn't matter what training you take that leader through for the leadership style. It's not going to be a long-term change. It may be a quick flash in the pan, and it may be 2 or 3 meetings with your staff, and you're all gung-ho about this new philosophy and this new way of doing things. But if it doesn't transform your heart in some way, it's just, what would the saying be? Lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. I feel like you're trying to change the DNA. So also in an encouragement thing, what does a time limit look like this? Like, what do you tell guys who are like, hey, I'm far deep, like my kids don't want to talk to me, my wife wants nothing to do with me, or there's a wake of chaos. What kind of time limit can you encourage these guys that it would take for something like this?
It didn't happen overnight. I did a lot of years of counseling, and so what you're trying to do is help them begin to turn the ship and to have the tools to begin to initiate change. You may have years of disconnection from your wife and your family, and you're not going to change that overnight.
Yeah.
And in some instances, honestly, it may not be recoverable. There may be damage that you have to say, I just have to do the best I can to work with what is left in the relationship. But I guess my goal is to begin to just say, I want to equip them with the tools for the rest of their life to change the course of the direction that they're heading. I don't know how long it could. I know it's not quick because it didn't happen overnight. But if I want to see that, like, this is interconnected to company culture. If I get that as a leader and I realize the most important thing is who I am, not what I can do, although what I can do is important, right? It is important. But if that begins with me as a leader, then I begin to pour that into all the team and the employees I have, and I begin to help them see the most important thing you bring to this company is who you are. Just be who you are.
Right.
We can shore up technical skill and things like that, but that's what makes great cultures is it's filled with people, great people, and so I that's a good question. I would say, I don't know what the timeline is for a person depending on how deep they are in, the ditch with relationships. Within a company culture, I know you can see some significant change in that with honest conversations and beginning to really, really own the mistakes you've made as a leader in a company and how you've hurt people and how you haven't valued people. It takes some time to restore people's trust to go, are you really going to live this out? But within a company culture, I've seen some significant turnarounds fairly quickly, even within ours. I mean, we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years on our team, and it's been really good. Our team, we joke about this, where we were at 2 years ago, and I'm not joking. I mean, I joke about it, but what I'm saying is not a joke. We can remember being in a literal management team meeting and having one guy look across the table and threaten to whip another guy's, and I'm in between them. And the guy who's saying it, is about 260, looks like a CrossFit, statue of, and I'm thinking I'm going to have to jump in between these guys. I'm going to get some damage. and thinking, what in the world am I doing in this context? We laugh about that now and go,
Yeah,
man, our
yeah.
team meetings now are just rich. So,
it kind of sounds. I mean, for some reason, I was thinking about like the Nehemiah, and it's not so much what gets done. It's are you building bridges and tearing down walls versus burning bridges and building them up. So I feel like the success is this idea of anybody out there listening is just this idea of, man, are you tearing down a brick at a time, and that brick is a success. Instead of saying I'm not there yet, it's like I'm one step closer.
Right.
Is what it sounds like you're saying.
Right. And I think, as you've been talking a lot about leadership culture, my filter, again, because I work in the church world, I don't work in the business world, but every man I engage with is in the business world.
Yeah.
There's so much applicability to the very things that are happening in the family. And chances are the way a guy manages his business world is very similar to how he manages his family. And those same walls that he's building at work, and that aggressive posture that can come out sometimes at work, or anger or whatever, is probably not far from happening in the home. And so you're really not just addressing the business culture. I mean, in the broader sense, you're actually tapping into and changing houses. You're changing marriages, and you're changing dads, where these kids are feeling like, Dad doesn't care about anything. He just, I'm not living up to whatever standards he has for me, to all of a sudden a dad embracing that and journeying with someone because they don't see him as an object, but see him as a person and their needs as valuable.
Yeah. I think that's huge, because you truly are changing the DNA of these guys.
That's 100% true. Think about the phrase, it's not, the most important thing is not what I do. It's who I am. So it's 100% true that translates into family. So think about that same phrase. I might say it this way, translating into our families, and how it happens in our families, at least for me, that I get derailed into thinking that the most important thing I can do as a dad is what I can do for my kids, i.e. like, well, I provide for them, and rather than the most important thing for my kids is who I can be to them. It's the same mentality. I began to kind of do this sense of it's achieving. So like I think all of us, I think God's shaped us to be providers and protectors. But what we think sometimes is we can get focused on, well, if I can just work hard and provide things, what I can do for them, and they can be in all the stuff, and my kids can be into all the things, well, that's going to require me. So that's my role, is just to provide, to do things for them, to provide things for them, and get derailed to think that, man, what they need is who I am supposed to be to them. They need me. They don't need the things. And I know our kids all want those things, right? Now I have grandkids, and they want those things. But it's exactly the same thing. We try to tell our guys, and I still struggle to believe this at my company, like that the most important thing is who I am, not what I produce. We totally translate, I think, as dads into our family, and we can convince ourselves that, well, at least I'm providing, even though I'm not engaged or connected to any of my kids. I'm not engaged or connected to my wife. But, I provide a good living for them, and they can do all the things they want to do. And that is meaningless, because that's not what they need most. What they need most is who we are as a father and a husband. So, I think it's an exact parallel in our families.
Man, I cannot thank you enough. And before we go, first off, I want to have multiple conversations with you for a whole host of reasons.
I know we should do like another one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for making time for this. I know how precious time is. Hey, for the roundtable, Kyle, this includes you. What is one book you would recommend, either for leadership of the heart, or for just men in general, and a 30-second why on that? 30-second why. I'll go first because I thought of the question.
Okay.
I'm going through a book right now called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it's a frustrating leadership book at first, because it's like most leadership books are like, here's the principle, here's the explanation of the principle, here's anecdotal stories that support the idea of the principle, and then here's a rewording of the principle. Chapter 2, that's the process. And this book is a narrative. It's a story of a guy starting at a new company, but it's fascinating because the company is set up in such a way that it really tries to focus on people, not as projects or not as cogs in the system, and how that transforms not just the system or the company, but it actually transforms his life with his wife and his kid, his son. And it's a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it. Leadership and Self-Deception, and it's definitely worth the time, and I think it's right in line with everything you've been talking about. So, Bill, how about you?
For me, my grandfather, I didn't grow up with a grandfather who was a spiritual leader, and there's no demise against that. We didn't know the Lord, but so if I had a spiritual grandfather, it'd be John Maxwell.
Yeah.
And so Developing the Leader Within You is probably one of the books that I really love when it comes to his stuff. It's at least a good high level, a lot of things in there, and really you could just take a dartboard of all of his books and just throw something at it, and I'd be okay with it. But that one, Developing the Leader Within You, is probably one of the best ones I've seen to start with.
Kyle, how about you? And then we'll end with our guest. Oh, hold on
a second.
You guys caught me on this one. It's been a long time, but probably the most recent one I read was Donald Trump's book that my ex-wife gave me. I don't know what message that sends, but
that's another podcast for another time. The secret messages our ex-wives give us. Yes.
Yeah, but his book on leadership, I forget what it's called. I was trying to Google it, but he's written a few. But it's interesting to see his perspective on leadership.
Yeah, interesting.
Nice. Jay, what about you, man? What are some books or is a book that you would recommend to these guys to get them started on this journey?
I think, just talking about, if you're talking about leadership, and of course there's a bunch of them, but like I think about Leading on Empty by Wayne Cordero is a great book. Because it just talks about the spiritual health. I mean, it's a great story about him just coming to a breaking point. And the joke that a couple of my friends and I use when we check on each other, where he's sitting he's about to speak at this huge leadership conference, and he goes out for a run. He starts crying, and he can't stop. So he's sitting on a curb crying. And and he talks about how he recognizes his internal collapse. He's got everything perfect, but he's spiritually, emotionally unhealthy. And the process and journey he goes through, depression and how leadership impacts us spiritually, emotionally. And, when we lead on empty, he's like leading on fumes. So that's a great leadership book.
Okay.
Across the board. Yeah.
Sounds good, man. And so thank you so much, man. We have one more segment we do before with all of our guys, but Jay, you've been amazing. We are going to have you on again. You don't even have an option. You're just going to have to be on. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Deal
guys.
with it. But so we do this with all of our guests, and it's called Fast Five.
Okay.
There it is. Which we don't really have an intro for it.
That was legit right there.
It's pretty good, man.
Did you do that with your mouth?
Yeah.
I did.
You're kind of like one of those talk box sound guys.
Yes, he is. He definitely is a talk box. I don't know.
The dude from Police Academy was a childhood hero, 100%.
Exactly.
Yes.
Totally what I was thinking.
So Fast Five. Here we go, Jay. Are you ready for these?
I'm ready.
Okay. If you had to live in a decade, which would you choose and why?
1860s, 1890, like the Wild West. Because honestly, I like to carry a gun and settle things the rough way.
I like this guy.
I love to hunt. So
I told you guys would love him. Okay, your favorite Bible verse?
Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart, because all of life flows out of it. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Doesn't he just like flow the milk of wisdom out whenever he talks?
Man.
No, man. If you could be a character in a movie, who would it be?
Desmond Doss, Hacksaw Ridge. Here's why. It parallels my life.
Okay. Go for why.
I feel like God put me to be like the medic on the battlefield to help the wounded. That's me, man. I just want to drift around the battle and, kind of lines up with Epic Warrior. So dude saved 75 guys in the bloodiest battle in World War II.
Without a gun, though.
Without a gun.
I'm not. I mean, that's one part of the story I don't.
You probably
I would at least have a sidearm. All right.
I'd be shooting people and saving other people.
Again, I love it. Awesome. Okay, so the next one. If you had to pick one, what toppings would you put on your worst enemy's pizza?
Surströmming, you know what that is? That's that stinky fish in a can.
Oh,
that makes people. You ever seen that stinky fish can? You need to Google that. You try to open it.
Surströmming.
And then the stinkiest cheese in the world is called Kazu Marzu. So it'd be like kind of fish and cheese pizza.
Oh, gosh.
It'd be a vomit pizza, basically.
Talk about a worst enemy.
I don't want you to be an enemy of me ever, Jay.
I am a friend of Jay.
If I got a pizza rolling in my house and it says gift from Jay, I'm not opening it.
I'm not opening it.
Nope. I'm putting it right in the trash.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah, vomit fest.
If you had to pick one color your shirts could be forever, what would it be?
OD green.
OD green. What's OD green?
Just can't. It's kind of the green and a camo.
Camo. Oh yeah.
I'd just be always ready to hunt.
That's
the joke at the church sometimes, and I preach that my favorite color palette is camo. Yeah.
There ain't nothing wrong with that. Okay, so bonus question. I know you're out in Midland, so you got that beautiful cold front that moved through sometime last night. We just had it hit here in Allen.
Beautiful cold front, freezing
all the way
86.
down. Yes, all the way down to 86. So. From up north, we have this thing called apple cider donuts, and they're amazing. And so the question is, would you have an apple cider donut or any other donut?
Man, I don't even know what an apple cider donut is.
I feel like this is our calling.
This is becoming part of our calling. It is. Helping the hearts of men and mailing apple cider donuts to people.
I need to try one because I'm feeling like it's probably better than a regular donut.
It is incredible. So, yes.
There's something divine about it.
There is there's donuts and then there's this donut.
Yes, absolutely.
Bill, are you saying it's better than T&T donuts?
Oh, absolutely. Hands down, the better than T&T donuts.
Yeah.
And especially their coffee.
Do they call them the gut bomb? T&T donuts, the gut bomb?
Oh, my gosh. TNT, the gut bomb. It's terrible. Jay.
Yeah, I once chipped my tooth on an apple fritter from there. I think.
Are you kidding
2 months old.
That's the worst.
That's awesome.
I can say this because I lived in Midland forever, but I think our slogan should have been, welcome to Midland, Texas. Just deal with it. It's kind of what I felt like.
That's right.
Just deal with it.
It is what it is.
Just
deal with it.
Jay,
it is what it is.
Thank you so much for being on today. We're so glad to have you guys. Check us out on Instagram at Known Legacy. You can follow us and get up more updates from when we do these live things at Known Legacy Ministries on Facebook.
Yep.
And for questions, comments, or concerns, info@knownlegacy.org. If you've never tasted a cider donut, info@knownlegacy.org. We will pray for you. And Jay, you've been a huge blessing, and we will have you on again soon. Thanks for being on today.
Jay, great job.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you so much. And
really
thank you all for following us online and for checking out the live stream. We're happy you guys are doing it. So,
Travis, thank you. Kyle, once again,
great
thank
job.
you.
No problem, guys.
You are a blessing. You guys have a wonderful day, guys. We will see you soon.
God bless.